the off season. You were one of the early adopters to it, and now that you've had about what is it, a week and a half or so with this virtual program, uh, if you could answer this in a couple of ways, intuitively, you've had a whole different mindset, obviously, of how you manage this and have managed this in your whole career, counting your head coaching. So, what's it been like to adapt to that? A, and then B, if you can get into some of the detail of how you're handling it and what you really feel you're getting out of it.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I felt like, so about a week into this, we got together as a staff, and, we tried to really anticipate where it could go. And certainly, listen, I'm not a rocket scientist, but you could kind of get a feel for where this was headed, at least, that we probably weren't going to be back in the building for weeks on end. And so we got together as a staff and really tried to put our collective minds together, Vic, and put together a plan so we would have our act together. And we felt like the team or teams that came out of this the most prepared, the most unified, would potentially have created a competitive advantage. That remains to be seen. But we felt like when things kicked off, when given the option to kick off really a week ago, that we were ready to go. And I give our staff a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
Hi, Coach. Sal Capaccio here, WGR. Good to see you. It's been a little while.
Thanks, Sal, for introducing yourself. I appreciate that.
Making sure everybody knows when they listen on the audio. What can you describe draft night for you? I know we saw a shot of you, I think on day 3, maybe, your son was with you, but what was it like not being in the war room, not being with your scouts, all the communication that had to go on between everybody?
Yeah. There's certainly parts of it that were special because of the uniqueness of it, right? So the family, I think the environment of having the family around was certainly unique and made it special at the same time, to be able to share those moments with my kids now, my oldest two are getting to the point where they are taking a vested interest and want to hang out and watch some of that go on. But there, on the other end of it, there were certainly challenges where I couldn't obviously be looking at a full board, in real life. I had it on my screen, but so that presented some challenges. I know there was some talk about, hey, will they go forward with this? Will the NFL do this again? And obviously it's up to them. I think there are some. To me, I thought it was pretty intimate and a cool kind of look into the real lives of GMs and head coaches and decision makers out there. So I think that part was pretty neat, and maybe a once in a lifetime situation.
Thanks.
Hey, Sean, John Scott over here. Glad to hear things are going well on your end. You didn't have much action on the first night of the draft, and that's because of a big trade you guys made about a month and a half earlier. Just your reaction and what type of player you believe this team is acquiring with Stefon Diggs.
Okay, I got it. I'm being controlled by okay. The question, so I heard it, John, was about Stefon.
Yes.
Right? Okay. What type of player? Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think when you look at the production that Stefon has experienced over the course of his career, that speaks for itself, right? He's played in big games. He's had big roles in those games. And so, and then we've faced him, at least once during the regular season in the most recent past here. So, I think at the end of the day, we believe that and it's been shown and proven to this point that people are able to come to Buffalo and become the best version of themselves. And he's certainly been awfully good to this point. It's an opportunity for him to continue to grow, and it's an opportunity for us to get a good football player that'll help us win. So I've been very happy with his, since he's become a Bill, and since I've gotten to get to know him a little bit. Certainly, it'd be a lot easier if we were together to get to know one another. But the communication to this point has been top notch, and he's been a nice addition.
Thanks.
Hey, Sean, Matt Bove here with Channel 7. Glad to hear you're doing well. Kind of building off of that, you said it'd be a lot easier to get on the same page when you're actually with each other. But from just a technological standpoint, like, how do you ensure that these guys get to know each other in the best way that they can when all of these players are in their hometowns or wherever they happen to be? It feels like that's kind of the focus normally at this time of the year, is just introducing the new guys to the system and to the playbook and all of that. And now there's really none of that.
No, you're right, and that part's certainly a challenge. What we've tried to do is keep things as normal as we can this time of year, albeit certainly aware of the situation and circumstances that make it different and unique. That said, though, I mean, our players this time of year, to your point, are used to players sharing their stories, players sharing in some way, shape, or form in order to help bring our team together. And so we've continued with that during our meetings, where players are sharing, coaches are sharing, some of maybe where they live. They show them, they tell their story a little bit. They talk about their family. So we have not gotten away from that because at the end of the day, look, these are real human beings that we're trying to develop a sense of family, a sense of camaraderie, and a sense of then the resulting culture that comes from that. So we've continued with that.
Hey, Sean, Mike Catalana. Brandon talked about it. You talk about it all the time, competition. And when you bring in competition, from your experience and when you get these guys on the field, what does competition in that locker room do to a player? And what do you learn from a player when you bring in guys to compete with them for their spots?
Yeah, Mike, that's what we look for. Part of the DNA that we look for in our players is that, these guys love what I'll refer to as the confrontation, right? Because that's what it comes down to. It's confrontation. And I'm not talking strictly about the physical piece. I'm talking about, walking out in your front yard and playing pickup hoops. That's a confrontation. And when the lights are on, guys that love the confrontation are the types of players that we want in Buffalo. And so, look, there's certainly a business side of this, and this is where the business piece comes in. When you add players to a locker room, 6 to 12 or more every year based on the draft or free agency, that's the real piece of this. But in the middle of it all, listen, these guys know I love every last one of them the same. And so that doesn't change, but it is competition. Part of the goal of competition is that it brings out the best in all of us. And so if someone was fighting to take your job, it's going to motivate you to be better at what you do and develop a better set of habits. And it's no different for me and no different for our players.
Thanks.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Heather Prusak here, now with the CBS station here in Buffalo. First of all, glad to know you're doing well. Hope your family's doing well. I wanted to ask you about drafting Jake Fromm and how you see him fitting in with this team, what you see his role being, obviously with Josh being the starter, but can he come in and compete to be Josh's backup, be the number 2? How do you see him fitting in with this team?
Yeah, Heather, glad you're doing well. Also, appreciate that. Yeah, there's a long runway, Heather, for all these rookies. I know everyone wants to, m- you know, um, say, was this a good draft class? Was it not a good draft? There's grades out there. I always kind of, you know, laugh the day after the draft or the night of the last pick of the draft because someone puts out their draft grades and the next person puts them out, and I think that's part of it's part of having fun with it, right? But we won't really know, as you guys know, you're veteran reporters. You won't really know for multiple years between what happens from the time they're picked to how they develop. Um, but Jake, what we can talk about is what we know about Jake, and it's well documented. The type of person he is, the type of player that he's been, the competition to Mike's point earlier that he's faced, and what he's done with it at Georgia. He's played at a high level. He's won a lot of games, and I know that he's committed to coming in and really being the best teammate that he can be, and then earning every last inch of what he gets here. And I think that's a great way to start.
Thanks, Coach.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, thanks for doing this. You said something back at the combine about wanting to improve the protection of the quarterback, and going through the majority of the offseason now, you guys basically have the same top 7 with Darrell Williams chucked in there. So I guess my question is, where do you see this going with essentially the same starting 5, and then on top of that, how much they can improve from one year to the next without adding a new piece?
Yeah, Joe, good question. It's interesting because you look at it and there is added value in continuity, right? And you look at, hey, we all hope we're better in the second and third years of our job than we were in the first year, and I think if you're a true pro, that's what happens. And so when you have a group like we had last year that for the most part had not played a snap or many snaps together as we headed into the season, I thought that they really did some good things and took some significant strides as a group. And now to be able to have that group back, and then to add a piece or two in there is valuable to us. It is a veteran group that we do have. There's a lot of work to do between now and the time we kick it off in September. So we recognize that. We did look at some things in the draft, but overall, we're very comfortable with the group that we have, and I'm anxious and excited to watch these guys take another step under Bobby Johnson and the other coaches we have there.
Thanks.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Thad Brown, thanks again for doing this, and just good to see you. Like Brandon said, good to see faces every once in a while.
Yeah.
With all this team has done last year
every day. Can we do this every day? Is that good?
If you want. I mean, I'm sure we're cool with that. Maybe not everybody, but we'll see. Brandon has talked about, I'm sorry, the last 2 years, you guys have done such work on offense, building it up. Is there an excitement and an interest and a willingness more from your point of view to maybe press and attack offensively and be more willing to win a game 35-30 than maybe you have been?
Well, I like the 35. I don't like the 30. But I would love to take a seat on the bench in the fourth quarter of one of these games and, maybe eat an orange slice or something, or drink a Gatorade, and have my heart not going a million miles an hour. But that's the league, though, too. I think again, you guys have been around this league, and it's a it's a touchdown, give or take, game every week. And so you do find some of those games. And listen, I may be a little bit different than some defensive head coaches out there. I say I say that because I think a lot of defensive head coaches and maybe head coaches overall have a tendency to pad their side of the ball personnel wise. And I don't want to do that. You've got to score points in this league to win games. And I think to have a balanced football team, we need to score points, and that's been an emphasis and a theme that we've talked about since the end of the season last year, and I'm encouraged by what we've added personnel wise to help us in that category, as well as the work that our offensive staff has done this off season.
Thanks, Sean.
Hey, Sean, Matt Perino here. Good to see you. Two-part question here. This is the first time we've had a chance to talk to you since you guys signed Josh Norman. What did Josh say, or did you see when you met with him that proved to you that he could have a bounce back from an admittedly rough year in Washington? And where does he stand right now in terms of the competition in that cornerbacks room?
Yeah, Josh is, Josh, I've learned a lot in my experience being around Josh several years ago in Carolina. Josh is, they used to say, give a player 2 years, and you need to make a decision as a team in 2 years. And what I learned through being around Josh, I think it was really his third year in Carolina where he really came into his own and understood the defense and matured and became a consistent player. And so, now with Josh, watching Josh's film, where we had the chance when he got released from the Redskins, excuse me, and seeing how he played, I think, look, there's been a lot of talk of how he played and how his chapter in Washington maybe didn't unfold the way that a lot of people had hoped. But here's what I would tell you about Josh is, he is a highly competitive individual, and sometimes too the grass isn't always greener from a system or scheme standpoint, and culture as well. And so that's another potential example, really, of people coming to Buffalo and regaining, in this case, a better version of oneself with Josh. He certainly had experienced great success in Carolina with our culture there and the system, and so now, coming hopefully to a similar culture and in a similar system, the same system really, he'll be able to regain his form, and I know he's working extremely hard at it, and we're happy to have him.
Thanks, Sean.
Hey, Sean, Sal Majorana, good to see you. Is that a Sean McDermott jersey in the background there?
Yeah, it is. I'll sign it and get you one, Sal. They're tough to come by.
Hey, not only Josh Norman, but since we spoke to you at the Combine, you've done a huge amount of roster tinkering, especially on defense. You got a lot of free agents. Could you kind of just give us an overview of I know it's kind of a drawn out thing, but you signed a lot of guys, and they're all going to be, it looks like, key players. Could you kind of go through some of the moves you made to bulk up the defense? There's about 7 free agents there.
Yeah, I'll hit hopefully as much as I can here. So up front, I'll start up front, and I'm just going to go free agents. Is that not draft?
Right. Yep.
So free agency up front, we added at the end position Mario, Addison, and again going back to the Carolina roots. Mario was a key piece to our defense in Carolina, and again another highly competitive individual that played really good football for us, and so we felt like adding Mario would help us not only from a skill level standpoint, but also some of the leadership in the defensive line room. He's been a nice addition to this point, and then inside there we added Vernon, who I think Vernon and I overlapped a year or two in Carolina, and he was hurt a little bit and got off to a little bit of a slow start. But when you watch him, what he was able to do this past season in his contract year, we were impressed. Now it's about how he can sustain that and continue to grow beyond that. Quentin, who else we got? Derek.
Quentin Jefferson.
Yeah, position flexibility. I know you guys know how much I love that, and versatility I think is huge. So Quentin Jefferson played really good snaps for the Seattle Seahawks on a good defense. He's played inside, he's played outside. Love his relentless attitude and approach, a true pro. We're fortunate that we have some ex-Seahawks either on our staff or on our team So that was a good addition for us. Linebacker wise, Tyler and AJ, and Derek, help me out if I skip over someone. But linebacker wise, Tyler and AJ. Tyler is a guy that played football not too far from where I grew up. He went to Temple. And so I'm very aware of his college resume, his background. And then, him playing for Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. When you face teams and you know who their top special teams players are, that's a good thing. And Tyler, comes with a decorated resume as a special teams player. And also, I'll say I think he's an undervalued line of scrimmage player at the linebacker position also. So just the fit there, DNA wise, for us was certainly there. AJ kind of speaks for itself, right? AJ played alongside of Luke and Thomas Davis for me in Carolina. Then he went off and kind of, it's like the little brother going off to do his thing, and he did that in New Orleans. And it was fun to watch AJ from a distance in New Orleans, and then for us to reconnect and through the free agency period. And he's now got a family, which is really cool to hear, and just to see how far he's come in his career. And as a coach, I think just like a teacher, it gives you a lot of joy to watch a young man develop like that, both on the field and off the field. And then Josh, we've talked about Josh already as well. So just overall pleased with the guys we've added on the defense. Did I hit everyone?
Yeah. I mean, EJ Gaines, you brought him back too, I guess, was the other one.
Yeah. Again, it's the cool part about that one for you guys was it's neat when you have players that are available that reach out to us and are interested in coming back, even though they've left. And so I think it really speaks volumes about our culture, our team, the guys, the people in our building at the Bills. And so for a guy to really have only been here a small part of his career, but to then, really want to kind of finish things out as a Bill, I think is outstanding for what we're trying to do here.
Thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Okay, Sean, thanks for doing this. I'd like to follow up on Joe's question on the offensive line. You didn't take a tackle, Cody Ford coming back. Just how do you feel about what he earned from his play at tackle from his rookie year?
Yeah, Cody, got off. I think he's off to a good start. He, he had the injury, the offseason surgery and whatnot. But, excuse me. When you look at, I think we got what we thought we were going to get in the first season. In particular, he bounced in and out of some guard role as well in there, which is not easy to do. Really, what you try and look at the first season is some of the intangibles with respect to what type of person he is, the toughness he brings to the table, the smarts. And so we continue with that evaluation, this off season. By the way, he's handled his rehab through the course of the off season has been outstanding. So, which is not, I should add, not been easy to do, especially since these guys are not able, some of them, to be in our building, or there was a time where our building was shut down for those as well. So it's been a challenge. But I appreciate the way he's attacked it from the day he walked in the door.
Hey, Coach, how are you doing?
Maddie, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Brandon Bean talked with us when the virtual off season began and just said that you guys had some conversations about how to create competition during a time like this. How have you been able to do that? And also with chemistry and culture being so important right now with the new pieces on the team, have you had any conversations with veterans about how they can start creating that chemistry with the new pieces on this team?
Yeah, Maddie, it's been a challenge, right? The competition piece, because we do pride ourselves in having different forms of communication in our off-season competition in our off-season program. And so, again, I give credit to Eric Ciano and his strength staff and what they've done, getting creative, really finding different ways to reach out to the players to at least establish some sense of accountability in terms of how we know that they're working out and all that type of jazz. And so he's come up with some pretty cool pieces or new pieces to our off-season program in order to do that. And then the other question was, help me out, refresh my memory.
Just with the veterans on your team and all the new pieces on this team, creating chemistry with how important that is to the culture. Have you had any conversations with those vets as to how they can help do that right away, even though we're in this virtual period right now?
Yeah. So, these guys, I think a lot of these veterans, it used to be that most of the young players, the young draft picks in this case, were not really counted on other than maybe the first round draft pick or maybe the second round draft pick. And even those guys would come in and sometimes sit for a year or so. Now, I think a lot of these older guys are aware that the only way we're going to make progress and be on time with progress is if they reach out to these young players and get them up to speed, or help at least get them up to speed. And so that in and of itself has developed a little bit to this point of some camaraderie and some chemistry, but with a lot more room to grow at this point because of they're really separate right now, the rookies from the rest of the team by league rule. So who knows, give it a week or two here when we're allowed to blend the two together, and I think it'll grow exponentially more then when they can at least interact like this, like we are this afternoon.
Thanks, Coach.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, John Warrow.
John, how you doing?
Good, and yourself?
Good.
I went the opposite. I'm growing hair while you're shaving it.
I know you look good. My wife was getting on me about shaving my beard and everything, and I just said, hey, I think I told her, I said my skin needs some to be pampered, some moisturizer and all that type of good stuff that's out there. She gets mad when I use her products that are in the shower.
We won't tell anybody. Question. This team is built to win, isn't it? Right now, the way it stands.
You're beautiful, man. Right away, throw the fastball high and inside, chin music, fastball.
Right.
No, listen, we're definitely further along, John, than where we were when we got here, and that's the part of the goal. You want to be able to say that. Our roster, give a lot of credit to Brandon and his staff. They've done a phenomenal job and not just via the draft, but also it's a 365 day a year job, so filling gaps and holes via free agency, filling gaps and holes via the waiver wire at times when we can, although we have not been very high on that with where we rank in terms of the claiming order, but I'm just finding different ways to make our team better, whether it's the top third, middle third, or the bottom third of our roster.
And just my other question was about Josh Allen. We had Josh on one of these things about 3 weeks ago, and he acknowledged that expectations were higher on him, especially entering his third season. Do you agree with that coming into his third season, expectations are higher, and how much of a drawback might it be the lack of chemistry he's able to develop with some of these guys such as Stefon, given what situation we're in right now?
Yeah, I'll answer the end of your question first. I mean, that's real. I mean, it's you to be able to be developing that chemistry and the continuity and the timing, the rapport with one another now. Certainly we all know we can't do that, but we can only control what we can right now. And so, look, those two are professionals. Josh in his third year and Stefon and whatever year it is now for Stefon and the success he's had. And, I am concerned about it, but I guess I'm not worried at this point. I think that we'll have to do a really good job with our practice plans, making sure that we've got enough of that scripted so we can get those two on the same page and develop that chemistry that you talked about. So yeah, I mean, look, there's challenges for everyone, right? I mean, but what you do is you try and find ways to adjust and adapt. And like we said before, our theme this offseason has been find a way. And I think that really fits the time and the situation and circumstances we're in.
Thanks very much, Sean.
So you got it, John.
Hey, Sean, Josh Reed. Glad to see you're doing well. This pre-draft process was unlike any other, and hopefully it never happens again. But with that being said, how much did you get to know AJ before the draft rolled around? And how much did your relationship with, I had a chance to talk to both D-line coaches at Iowa. How much did your relationship with them and the knowledge that you could get with them, from them, and Kirk Ferentz, how did that make you comfortable when AJ was still on the board to go, all right, this is the guy that fits exactly what we want to do?
Yeah, I mean, listen, as you look at the guys in the first and second round, I mean, you can only spend so much time. You try and divide your time up best you can, and so, I've got some ties to Iowa and different guys I've coached over the years. I know Coach Parker, the defensive coordinator, who's been out there for a number of years as well, and so I'm fortunate that I've got some communication ties there, and so look, at the end of the day, this is where you also, because of the situation, usually as coaches, we're able to get our hands on the players at basically 2 or 3 exposures or interactions, the combine being one of them, which we still had, and then on-campus workouts, which were very limited before things got shut down, and then the top 30 visits where the players come to us, and which we didn't have that either. So, this is a big draft where, I think the power and the value of the scouts comes into play, right? I'm not just talking with just respect to AJ's case, but overall, I mean, these area scouts, let's give them a lot of credit. They spend all season, when we're here in Buffalo, with our season, they're out on college campuses, getting to know these players, spending time with some coaches best they can. And this is what we really have to, in a lot of ways, bank on as coaches during times like this, where we weren't as accessible to these players as we normally are, or they weren't as accessible to us as they normally are. So, but with that being said, Brandon and I, as well as Joe and Dan, had a good core of communication with our coaches, and we went through our normal routine like we normally do leading up to the draft, and so so we felt pretty good overall about our preparation.
Hey, Sean, just, I guess, follow-up question relative to what John Worrell was asking you there regarding chemistry. What are the position groups you're most concerned with when it comes to what we're dealing with this offseason?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when you talk about the timing of the passing game is, you've got to, if you look at how we shape our off season, we usually spend about 70% of our off season, I should say spring, trying to shape our passing game, because there's no pads on. So there's not a whole lot of sense in spending a whole lot of time on the run game during spring ball. And then in training camp, it flips a little bit, not totally, but it starts to even out a little bit more, maybe 60-40 or 50-50, because you do have pads on, and you are able to work the 9-on-7 drills and whatnot. But that's probably my biggest, probably the biggest thing we're missing right now is that time on task and developing that passing game. And that's where a lot of the timing comes in. So if there was one area, that would probably be the biggest right now.
When it comes to your staff, Sean, what is the plan and what are the expectations for your assistant coaches and their jobs and how they're able to carry them out here over the next couple months?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're all professionals. And so, I know this is where to me, passion and discipline play a big part, right? If you're passionate about what you do, you shouldn't need a kick in the butt to go to work, get up every morning and go to work. The longer this has gone, and I'm sure you guys feel the same thing, the longer it's gone, the more discipline it's taken. I would say at the beginning, it took discipline to find a routine. And then as the weeks have added up and stacked up, to me, that's when those that have a high amount of discipline out there are able to thrive in environments like this. As one of the players said, that he's built for the quarantine. Just with all due respect to all that's gone on, he just meant, he usually this time of year prior to coming back to Buffalo is, in his weight room, training his butt off, studying his butt off. And so, look, it does take a huge amount of discipline right now to stay disciplined in your approach, your routines, to get up at a certain time, to take a break at a certain time, and then to go to bed at a certain time so you can stay on a good, healthy routine.
Thanks, Sean.
Hey, Sean. Building off of that, I'm curious what you've maybe learned about yourself in the last 6 weeks, having to go through all this, take a step back. I know you're always evaluating what you do, and certainly nothing makes you do that more than 6 or 7 weeks where you can't leave your house.
Yeah, boy, we could be here for hours. Let's just start with trying to do my job from home. Even, just a great example is the draft the other night. We're on a call like this. I'm trying to talk to Brandon. I want to have my family close to me so they can experience it, but I've got kids that are young, and young kids sometimes don't always understand. And so they're yelling out and I'm trying to talk. And so I hit the mute button. And so, I'd say this, I think probably for a lot of us out there, I've learned more about myself as a person through this than anything. Just in terms of, again, the patience that has to go into moments like this where I want to have the team in front of me, where I can't. You want things right here and now, and we're not able to have things sometimes that we want right here and now in front of us. I've also learned some things about myself around the house that I've had to figure some things out that I normally have not had to figure some things out. So I'm learning on that regard. I do love working around the house. So yeah, I think I think we'll look back on all of this hopefully one day. And I think this is part of my goal too. And is to look back and say, you know what, I'm glad and I'm happy with how I handled this, right? On a personal level, on a professional level, on a spiritual level, all that because there'll be books written, and everyone on this call will never forget this, right? And so I want to be able to say that I handled it the right way.
Thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Marcel, Louis-Jacques with ESPN. I appreciate you doing this for us.
Sure.
I got really a two-part question. First, kind of going off your previous answer about the importance of discipline this time of year. With AJ Epinesa specifically, how much does coming from a program like Iowa influence his selection? A program that's culture is really centered around discipline and accountability.
Yeah, I've never, that's a great question. I've never spent a day with Iowa football. I've got my mom is from Iowa, so I was born in Nebraska, obviously. So I've got some really close ties out there to those programs. But overall, I feel like their culture is known, to your point, and it's admirable the way that they've built that culture. Coach Ferenc, I've coached players that have come from that culture. The minute we drafted AJ, I immediately got a couple of texts from players that I've coached that went to Iowa that know him or know of his family. It seems like seems like there's a lot of parallels between their culture and our culture here. Not intentionally so, but I do have a lot of respect for what they've been able to do out there over the course of time and sustain it.
Thanks. And second part, kind of sticking with the defensive line, what kind of impact has Eric Washington had on the guys you've been able to bring in. Obviously, Mario Addison, Vernon Butler, even Brian Cox yesterday. They've all got experience playing under him.
Yeah, I think that speaks volumes about Coach Washington. And Eric and I first were introduced to each other when he came to Carolina. I was the coordinator. He became our defensive line coach, and both of us were rather young in our respective roles in terms of experience. And so I know it's been just really cool to watch Eric grow over the years, and to see him with his family, and then for me to grow over the years and hopefully some similar capacities. And now to be reunited in Buffalo is really, I appreciate it, because he did not have to, he had choices, did not have to come here, and he wanted to come here and move his family here. So I think, that I'm very appreciative of that, and I can't wait to see what value he adds to our defensive line.
Thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Coach, thanks for taking the time today. You already touched on how scoring more points was an off-season priority, and obviously Stefon plays pretty heavily into that. I know scoring in college is different than scoring in the NFL, but do you believe some of your draft picks like Zach Moss, Gabe Davis, Isaiah Hodgins at least have the potential to help in that area at some point?
Well, we do. As I mentioned earlier, they're good football players. I think I was on with Murph and Steve Tasker, and these guys are good football players. I know there's a lot of sometimes people get enamored with 40 times and flashiness and all this type of those types of things out there. But these guys, at the end of the day, I mean, what do you want receivers to do? You want receivers to be able to catch the football and score touchdowns, right? You want a running back that's had a history of production year after year, carrying the football, breaking tackles. And, albeit I know there may not be, the fastest guys out there. But at the end of the day, they were right for the Buffalo Bills and the fit for us. And so I give Brandon a lot of credit for adding those players. You just spend time watching them on film, which I know many of you have, and it doesn't take long to be impressed with the receivers, the way they catch the ball in contested areas, and then with Zach, what he's been able to do year after year in gaining a lot of yards.
Thanks.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, another one from me. Now that you have the pieces that you added via free agency in the draft, how much does life change on pass rushing downs without Lorenzo Alexander? And somewhat related, how do you feel the roster you have is equipped at big nickel, which is a spot you've been trying to get better at over the years?
Yeah, so the big nickel piece remains to be seen. There's a couple, Dean Marlowe did some of it for us last season. Saran Neal is a candidate for it as well. And so, that's another piece. We're missing some of those reps, or we will be missing some of those reps potentially here coming up in the coming weeks. And then just with rushing the passer with Lorenzo, I mean, it's a similar feeling to when Kyle retired, right? I mean, you can never replace a Kyle. You can never replace a Lorenzo. You just try and fill it. And so you saw us add a couple of different pieces to the roster. Quinton Jefferson, Vernon, Mario, AJ's skill set is a little bit different from Lorenzo's. And so Lorenzo's skill set is unique in that he can do both, where he can play off the ball as a linebacker on early downs and then put his hand on the ground in passing situations. So there's only a few people that I've been around that have been able to do that. So, we'll miss that. We'll miss his leadership off the field and his influence in our locker room. That's for sure. And so, but he's reached out a couple times between the time where he left and now, and he reminds me he's still available. He showed me a video of himself in his new weight room and said he's staying ready just in case. So I appreciate that.
Thanks again, Sean.
Yeah, thank you guys. Good to see everyone. Good to see your faces, and stay safe and healthy out there.
Coach, Mookie Hawkins, Waffle Sports 1080. How you doing?
Good, Mookie, how are you?
I'm up here in outer space, as you can see right now.
I like that. You win for best backdrop.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Coach. Just to piggyback off Joe B's question, I know how you covet those hybrid safeties, those safeties that can do linebacker things. Guys like Jeremy Chin and Kyle Duggar were high on your board, but Espinez is just too good to pass up. So is there still room for improvement? Some veterans releases, probably like Tyvis Powell, Obi Melifonwu, do they kind of fit your mode, or are you content with what you have?
Well, we're never content. That's not really a word that fits my vocabulary or our vocabulary. Brandon, I think mentioned to you guys a few days ago, he left a couple spots open on the roster for moves like that. If certain players become available that we feel like can help us, and this will be an off season where I think you're going to see some more veteran players added because of the lack of time to certain rosters around the league.
Okay, and last final question, Coach. How are you impressed the way that your players have embraced this community during this pandemic?
Oh man, it's been awesome. I just think the whole community, Western New York. I'm not able to see everything, obviously, across the country, but what I'm able to see and the people I'm able to talk to through this, it just to me reaffirms what I first believed about the people of Western New York and our fan base in particular. It's been incredible, and I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Thanks a lot, Coach.
Appreciate your time, Coach.
Thanks, guys. Take care of yourselves and your families.
Yes, sir.